Good evening and welcome to the show. It's called Batenegi Parliament Talk Show, coming to you live from the Access TV studio from 7 o'clock up until 8 o'clock. And today, like I said, we are welcoming Namibia's most celebrated civil rights activist. I'm talking about none other than Comrade Michael Amushelelo. Comrade Amushelelo, thank you so much for coming through.
No, it's a pleasure for having me on the show, and it's unfortunate that I could not be live and direct in the studio.
Yeah,
I'd have definitely loved to have been in Botswana, and hopefully next time we can have a live interview while I'm in the studio as well.
yes, we'll make those preparations for you to come here in Gaborone, Botswana. A lot of people would like to see
Not a
you
problem.
here. Yes. For those people who may not know you, can you kindly remind us, who is Michael Amushelelo?
I'm just a man. Okay, I can't call myself young anymore, seeing that I'm married, got a family, and all of that. But in a few words, I'm just a dreamer who dreams of an Africa where there's no poverty, an Africa where there's no injustice, an Africa where our resources truly benefit our people, an Africa that is finally truly economically liberated, and we are no longer enslaved in terms of debt and all of these things. That's pretty much who I am.
Yes. Some people see you leading marches, closing shops, being arrested. What motivates you to do the work that you do?
Basically, someone has to stand up for the weak. Someone has to be able to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Someone has to be at the forefront championing the rights of others. I mean, today in Africa, we enjoy freedom not because we were the ones who fought for it. It was our forefathers, in the case of Botswana, starting with King Serekatsa Kama and the other two kings who went to go petition the Queen of England that time to say, why must you bring this colony? Why can we not just be a protectorate of Britain? And that is why you have individuals such as that who had literally fought for us. Now, throughout history, it has been proven that one or two people will always be the courageous amongst the others, and those are the ones who would always stand up and sacrifice their lives in order to fight for the betterment of others.
Yes. Some people have been amazed by the work that you do, your bravery. Have you ever, in any case, in a way, in the work that you do, decided to say, look, this is so overwhelming and I'm stopping here?
There was a case in point. The problem is that, when you're a visionary leader, unfortunately, sometimes the people are not able to see the vision that you want to bring for them. And obviously, if we look at in terms of the biblical terms, let's say, for example, Moses, who was leading the people out of slavery in Egypt, it was his own people that were fighting him because his own people could not understand to say, how does this guy want to free us from bondage? How does he want to free us from slavery when he's just a man like one of us? So sometimes, unfortunately, the people are not able to see what is it that you want for them. And that is why you will notice in Africa, we only celebrate once they are dead. We don't celebrate their life. Unfortunately, that's how life has been, and that's how life will continue to be.
Yes. Would you say these people that you are representing are giving you the total support that you need?
Absolutely not. You see, like I've said, some people think that, I want to cause anarchy, I want to cause havoc, I want to cause chaos. And these are the very same people that you're fighting for. These are the very same people that you're trying to free. The problem is a slave doesn't know they are a slave because they've been so enslaved mentally that they don't realize that you are actually trying to free them. I mean, look, even throughout history, when slaves were trying to free other slaves, there were slaves saying, no, let's not run away. Let's remain with our master. Our master is so good. I mean, even though he whips us, even though he lynches us, our master is still good. And unfortunately, that enslavement, mental enslavement of our people is still the same. And when you are trying to free people, unfortunately, there will be those amongst those that you're freeing that will still want to continue being slaves because they do not know that they're slaves.
Yes, most of the people that you represent are low-wage workers, and some people have been asking, who is financing this revolution that Comrade Amushelelo is, bringing through?
No, and unfortunately, sometimes you just have to do it out of goodwill and hope that what you sent into the universe will one day be brought back to you. So, unfortunately, no one is financing the revolution because the capitalists are the ones that we're fighting. So, they obviously want to continue exploiting our, and it's through this exploitation of our people that they are profiting. And I think essentially many people don't understand what is the essence of capitalism. Capitalism is a dog eat dog world. That simply means that your companies are going to maximize their profits, and the only way they're going to maximize their profits is by ensuring that workers are paid the lowest bare minimum wages possible. And unfortunately, someone needs to stand up and say that this is wrong. Our people deserve better. It is not correct that these are the wages that our people should be earning. If you look at majority of our people in our country, we're ranked as one of the most unequal countries in the whole entire world after South Africa. And that is because we in South Africa share a common history, which is obviously apartheid. And obviously the apartheid legacy still lingers on because we have ultimately just built an extractive economy, an economy that is obviously controlled by a white minority. And as a result of that, when we gained our independence, which was not through the barrel, it was basically a negotiated independence whereby we adopted a constitution that allowed the whites to keep the land and the economy. And sadly, what we're seeing is that it's basically just a continuation of apartheid. And unfortunately, nothing has changed. And interestingly enough, I've been doing a bit of homework. I've been doing a bit of research. Companies have actually become much more profitable during independence than they were during apartheid. Because during apartheid, some of these companies, unfortunately, were not allowed to trade globally due to the fact that some of these companies were sanctioned. But now with the independence, these companies have been able to profit 10 times or 20 times more. And unfortunately, they're not sharing their profits, despite the fact that some of these companies do come from the time of colonialism, during the time of apartheid, and they're still existence up until this day.
Comrade Amushelelo, let's look at the economy of Namibia in relative context to the way of lives of people of Namibia. Would you say the lives of the people in Namibia are in correlation with how much their country is producing?
And unfortunately, sadly not. I want to tell you something interesting. Our stock exchange, which is called the Namibian Stock Exchange, it's the second largest stock exchange in Africa after Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Our stock exchange currently is valued at something about 2.126 trillion Namibian dollars. If we have to convert that to Botswana, that would be approximately about 2 trillion Botswana pula, given the fact that the pula is slightly stronger than our economy.
Yeah.
But now imagine we've got a 2 trillion stock exchange, but over 1.6 million of our population lives in poverty. Over 1.7 million of our population is unemployed. So does that give you an indication that we have one of the best economies in the world? Unfortunately not. And this is what needs to be understood, to say that, yes, the economy might be performing, the economy might be growing, but the economy is only growing to the benefit of the capitalist. The economy is only performing well to the benefit of the capitalist. There was a report recently released in our country whereby over 434 billion Namibian dollars is only being shared amongst 1,600 people. That's now approximately 415 billion pulas that is only being shared amongst 1,600 people. And that just gives you an indication why we've got such high inequality, due to the fact that the wealth of the nation is only being kept in the few. Now, the problem is that we've obviously opted for what is called the mixed economy, which is basically just pure capitalism. Now, what people don't understand that in capitalism, The means of production, which are your mines, your land, and all of these things, they are now in the hands of private owners. They're not in the hands of the state. And as a result of that, unfortunately, whatever profit you make from a mine, you don't need to share it with the rest of the nation. It's basically all your profits. You get to keep the profits. You just pay a few taxes, and that's about it. The rest of the money, you're welcome to keep it. And most of these companies, because they are foreign-owned companies, they basically ship their profits off to their countries where they usually operate from. And that's the sad part. And unfortunately, due to lack of regulation, that is why we're seeing the fact that we are one of the most unequal societies. And that's because those who are supposed to be making sure that the wealth is redistributed accordingly, they don't care, because unfortunately, things who of production.
You have been talking about capitalists, and these are, business, big corporations that will not voluntarily share the wealth with the people. And I'm interested to know, what is the political role of your government in terms of making sure that this wealth is distributed to that people, because these are the people who voted them in power?
Interestingly enough, and this is a history that many people don't know. You see, Botswana is a very lucky country. When Botswana gained its independence, I think in 1960, at the time, there was no discovery of mines or anything of the sort. There were no significant discoveries of anything. And then, luckily, after independence, you guys discovered huge diamond deposits. And then De Beers, that time, I think it was, let me just quickly look at the book. It was Harry Oppenheimer. He was the son of Ernest Oppenheimer, the big diamond conglomerate De Beers. They then came and then they negotiated with the government of Botswana, and that's how DEP Botswana was created. Now, what's interesting about that is that you guys got a 50-50 partnership in Botswana, and then you also got equity in De Beers, the company itself. That simply means that all the diamonds that De Beers mine, whether in Namibia, whether in Sierra Leone, whether in Swaziland, or wherever it is that they mine, you guys also get to enjoy some of those profits. Unfortunately, with us, when we then got our independence, we didn't have such brilliant leaders like you guys had. And unfortunately, we didn't get the best of deals. The only 50-50 deal that we have is one with De Beers. But unfortunately, we don't have anything in terms of ownership at the international level. We only have this ownership that we currently have in our country. Now, this is perhaps the only deal where government has more than 50% of the shares in that company. And that is why you'll see that a large chunk of government revenues comes from diamond sales due to that particular deal that was struck by Harry Oppenheimer. Now, Harry Oppenheimer was obviously a visionary. He understood that these resources do not belong to us, they belong to the nation. So it's best if we obviously share 50-50. But sadly, after that, whatever other minerals covered or whatever other minerals we had, government has almost zero to no shares in this particular mines that we have. Here's the problem. When you don't own the mines, you must now settle for crumbs and you must now settle for peanuts. Now, unfortunately, you do not bring your people out of poverty. You are not able to develop your country using peanuts. You see, the reason why, if you go to countries such as Norway that are called the Scandinavian countries, those countries have nationalized some of their of their wealth. Like, let's say, for example, in Norway, Norway owns their oil 100%. And that is why Norway is able to make sure that the standard of living of their people is at a par next to nothing else in the world. I mean, we recently watched the World Cup being hosted by a small country in the Arab country called Qatar. What's interesting about Qatar is that Qatar only has about 2.3 million people or 2.1 million people. But most infrastructure, the stadiums that they had to build, they had to import immigrants to come and build those stadiums because the people, the Qataris, are not interested in doing manual work such as building stadiums and things of that sort. Why? That's simply because their government has given them a good enough standard of living that they do not even need to work. They are simply enjoying their oil revenue, their oil money, and they
Yes.
are being taken care of their people. And that's unfortunately what African governments do not understand, to say that you need to nationalize your mines. You need to have control of your means of production. I mean, whether you like it or not, people are always going to want diamonds. People are always going to want your gold. But the problem with, and the tragic with Africa is that we are not united. And the problem without the unity of Africans is that if we, let's say, for example, Namibia today are to nationalize all our mines, what's going to simply happen is that we'll be isolated, we'll be sanctioned. Once we are sanctioned, our neighbors will even become
Yes.
so scared to do business with us because they will also be afraid that we'll be sanctioned. And as a result,
Yes.
we end up inviting the white people back into our economy in order for them to come and run it. Because unfortunately, you as Botswana will not want to buy our diamonds. Angola would not want to buy our diamonds because you will be threatened to say that we'll sanction you as well. But if Africa is to unite and we are to speak with one voice, what we're then going to do is we're going to have a cartel the same way OPEC has a cartel. If you see how the Arabs have OPEC, which is basically the oil petroleum controlling companies or producing countries, they simply decide to say, okay, guys, what do we decide the oil of a barrel is going to be? What's the
Yes.
price? And then they set the standard. Now, why is it here in Africa we don't say who are the diamond producing countries in Africa? And then we
Yeah.
all come together and say, this is now how we're going to charge per carat.
Yeah.
Because we are now the ones controlling it, and we now are the ones deciding how much the value of our resources are.
Yes, I hear you, Comrade Amushelelo, and the praises that you have showered towards our country. But I wanted to hear from you. What exactly do you think your government should do so that there is that equal distribution of wealth in your country? What exactly do you think the government should be doing of Namibia?
What the government should be doing is obviously putting down its foot and saying that all resources of this country, whether beneath the ground or in the air or wherever, in the ocean or whatever, they should benefit Namibians. But like I said, already from the onset in 1990, on the 12th of March, when we gained our independence, we had already sold our sovereignty of our country because we had accepted basically a constitution that was adopted for us that we never basically wrote and all of that. So as a result of this constitution that we have, the constitution in this country basically simply says that whatever wealth you had prior to independence, you basically get to keep it. Now, 70% of our land is owned by the minority, which is white. Now, I've never seen anyone going to mine for diamonds in the air. You unfortunately have to mine them either in the ocean or on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, if 70% of your land is owned by the previously advantaged, which is obviously the white minority, where then do you get your to mine? Where then do you get to get resources? Because our constitution simply says that whatever you had before independence, you get to keep it. And that's why our uranium is now in the hands of the Chinese, because the Chinese have bought over our uranium. Our gold is being mined by the Canadians. Our fish is being controlled by the Spaniards and the Russians.
Yeah.
The Icelandics were here. And then obviously that's where we got the scandal of the fishing scandal. So the problem is that we would now need to look and say, how do we remodel the constitution that we currently have to ensure that all our policies speak to making sure that Namibians are able to benefit? Now,
Yes.
part of the problem is that we have an extractive economy. What does an extractive economy simply mean? It simply means that people come here, they start digging, whatever it is they find, they simply take it out, rocks and everything, and then they go process it elsewhere. So what we need to do now, government, in fact, last year or 2 years ago, they said that all mining companies should be able to literally process whatever minerals that we get. And this was in specific to the lithium that we found, because we have found lithium deposits, and we all know that the world is now
Yeah.
moving towards electric vehicles and all of that. So we're supposed now to have plants in order for us to basically be able to process some of these things. But sadly, because the government is a sleeping, it's a weak government, we are unfortunately being molested to the point whereby.
Yeah. So basically, Comrade Amushelelo, you are saying there is lack of political will to redistribute, the wealth.
I'm not saying that's exactly what it is. The political will is not there. I mean, the rhetoric is always going to be there. I mean, I remember a few years ago, obviously, when it's always election time, you'll always find politicians, no, we need to nationalize our mines and all of that. But after elections, then it becomes same business as usual. I mean, if you listen to our Minister of Mines, and interestingly enough, he's called Tom. And we all know from slavery, there's a guy who used to be called Uncle Tom, who used to be a sellout. Now, this Minister of Mines recently...
Comrade Amushelelo?
Their resources, and they should apparently compete. Yes?
Yes, you can continue.
Yeah. So the minister literally says that apparently Namibia should not have a sense of entitlement towards their natural resources. Apparently, we should compete equally with those people coming from wherever it is, foreigners. And this type of thinking from a minister already gives you an indication to say that when these guys meet in Qatar, or when they meet in Vienna, or when they meet in Stockholm, or when they meet in London, they are clearly not negotiating for the interest of the Namibian or for the interest of an African. He's clearly negotiating from a point of weakness, seeing that he's most probably been paid a bribe, or he also has some form of shares through a proxy or something of the sort. And that is why they are saying that we should not feel entitled to our own resources.
Yeah.
We as Namibians and we as Africans in particular must always feel entitled to our resources, because that is our God-given birthright.
Yes. I read somewhere, Comrade Amushelelo, that your country might have or have discovered 10 billion barrels of oil in Mopani. I don't know whether you know about this, and how do you think this could change the economy of Namibia?
Well, that's a reality. The United States recently built one of its biggest army bases here in Windhoek, Namibia. Now, when we speak about army base, we're speaking about their embassy. And what people don't understand is that America's embassies are basically sort of their armies, and they've built themselves one of the biggest embassy, and that's because in preparation of the oil that has been discovered in this country. Now, America doesn't just invest heavily in its embassies and army bases if there's nothing tangible in your country. There are many African countries where America doesn't have a presence simply due to the fact that there's nothing of interest for America. And you all know that America is the largest consumer of oil in the world. And sadly, our oil is not going to benefit Namibians. I keep telling Namibians to say that if you're currently not benefiting you, if the diamonds that you have are currently not benefiting you, gold, lithium, manganese, zinc, and all of these things, you're not currently benefiting anything. What makes you think that the oil is coming to benefit you anything? So the oil again is going to be exclusively for the political elite. It's going to be again exclusively for the capitalist. It's going to be exclusively again only for a select few. Unfortunately, ordinary Namibians must forget about benefiting from the oil boom, anything of that sort.
I hear you, Comrade Amushelelo, but the media, some of the media outlets in our country are saying the discovery of this oil, it's going to make Namibia's fourth largest oil producing country in the next decade. What do you think should be done in order for the discovery of this oil to benefit the people of Namibia as well as the economy at large?
Well, we need to have larger stakes in oil discoveries. If you look at it, our government recently sold almost 8% of its license to a company called Chevron. Now, I don't know why is it that we sell our licenses to American corporations or foreign corporations when these licenses are owned by a Namibian company, which is called NAMCO, which is basically our state-owned enterprise or state company. And it sold recently, and this was yesterday, it sold 80% of its shares to a company called Chevron. So first thing is first, we now need to have no less than 51% ownership of oil or any gas that we're going to find. Secondly, we need to now make sure that the oil is going to be refined in these countries. Now, this is what people don't understand. When you refine oil, because the raw form is called crude. Now, from this crude, and once you refine it, you're now able to find your petrol, your diesel, your paraffin, and you are even able to create the pharmaceutical industry from this. I mean, most of the pills that we find in the hospital, which is called your paracetamol, upanado, they come from fuel products, or they come from those crude oil products. So we then should be able to say, how are we going to ensure that we as a country going to make maximum benefits? And this is only through, number one, 51% ship ownership in all our oil. And then from there on, we gradually move to nationalizing them. And then once we have nationalized, we just basically are going to need a leader like the United Arab Emirates have. And then Namibia is surely going to become the Dubai of Africa, or Zealand, or the New York. But it's going to take leadership. Unfortunately, right now, I have zero faith in the current government. For 34 years, all they've been able to produce is poverty, high unemployment, high inequality. So I do not trust this government that's been here for the last 34 years to now, with oil discoveries, be able to do anything. The only thing that they're going to do is they are most probably going to build the largest state house. They are most probably going to build a bigger parliament for them to sit comfortably. They are most probably going to buy new jets. That's the only thing they're going to do. But in terms of the ordinary person, there's nothing that we're going to benefit.
Comrade Michael Amushelelo, Namibia's most celebrated civil rights activist. You are talking to him right here on Batenegi Parliament Talk Show, live from the Access TV studio right here in Gaborone, Botswana. We are going for a very quick break. When you come back, we continue with Comrade Amushelelo. If you are just joining us, welcome to the show. It's called the Batenegi Parliament Talk Show, broadcasting live right here from the Access TV studio in Gaborone. We're talking to Comrade Michael Amushelelo, Namibia's most celebrated civil rights activist. He said he's not young anymore, but I've checked somewhere that he was born in 1991. But you know, for the reasons that he has already advanced, I can say, he's not young anymore. Comrade Amushelelo, let's continue with our conversation. And when you continue with our conversation, I understand that the population of Namibia, 10% of it, it's you know, made up of the Germans. Can you possibly remind us, how did this come about?
Okay, well, it's not about 10%. I think it's about 7%, and this also includes the Afrikaner. So this came about obviously from the Berlin Conference of 1880. I'm not quite sure. I've forgotten now. Now, obviously, remember, first we had obviously the conquest of the Vasco da Gamas, who obviously came from Portugal, and then they obviously came to tour Africa. Then you had your Jan van Riebeecks, and then you literally had the scramble of Africa. And then the Europeans, because at the time they were fighting each other, they then decided to say, man, guys, let's look at this continent and let's divide it amongst ourselves equally. And then obviously the Berlin Conference, as it was famously known, Germany decided that they are going to take Southwest Africa, which was obviously now called Namibia. And that's how basically we then obviously became, or that's how Germans got here. Now, obviously, Germany got defeated during World War One. And as a result of that, we were then given as a protectorate or as a territory, and then we became part of the British Commonwealth or the British Africa. And then South Africa was then given to basically administer us and then basically prepare us for independence. So that is how Germans basically own large parts of our land. And that's basically land that they forcefully dispossessed, because remember, the first genocide in the world took place, or then the first genocide in the 19th century took place here in Namibia, where the Ovaherero and Namas were literally slaughtered. They were raped, they were poisoned, they were killed, and then their land was basically taken off. And that is why most of the Ovaherero speaking people and Nama speaking people eventually ran to Botswana. And that's why we still, up until today, have part of our communities living in Botswana, and they had fled basically the genocide. So that is how the Germans basically came to own Namibia. And if you look at most of our infrastructure, it almost looked like it's German. If you go to Ludwitz, where von Ludwitz was one of the guys who Ludwitz is named after, it's basically a mini German. If you go to Swakopmund, it's another German town. And if you go to other parts of Namibia as well, even here in Windhoek, if you go into the main street, Independence Avenue, you still find there German architectural structures here. And that is how basically Germans became part of Namibia.
Are they part of the capitalists that you earlier complained about?
Pretty much. I mean, they own large tracts of our land. They own large portions of our economy. And the sad part is to say that we've obviously integrated, we have now become obviously to say one as per se, but the problem is they do not want to share the wealth. They do not want to redistribute. I mean, it is absolutely wrong for one individual to have 100,000 football fields as their, but one person doesn't even have just a small place you can call home. And when we say, guys, let's share the land equally, let's redistribute the wealth, they are saying no. You know, they've got this arrogance and sense of entitlement to say that this is ours and all of this. And I'm like, Chief, how can this be yours? Yours from where? No, our forefathers, they bought it and what. I'm like, no, your forefathers murdered our people. They killed our people. They raped our people. They plundered our economy. They exploited our people. And now you're saying that you bought it. You didn't buy it. You stole it. Now, the reality is that we sometimes don't want to be honest with one another. And unfortunately, there's one time going to come a generation of young people who are going to be unapologetic and who are going to demand what's rightfully theirs. And unfortunately, if these people do not share the land with others, one day the people are going to revolt, and that's going to be a terrible situation, because we all know that revolutions, they're not roses falling from heaven. They are bloody, they are not nice, and unfortunately, the masses, once they become tired, unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, I understand very well that the issue of land in our country is one of the most contentious issue. Let me appreciate from the side of the government if there is any political will to possibly redistribute some of the land. I've already heard you that those people who are owning the land at this particular juncture are not willing it to give it back to some of the people in in the country. But let me appreciate from the government side, is there any political will to, redistribute that land?
If there was any political will, our constitution would have said that we are going to expropriate the land without compensation. You see, I cannot steal something from your house. And then once I've stolen it, I'm now saying, no, chief, if you want your TV back, you must buy it back at this particular price. You stole it, my boss. The TV belongs to me. So why must I buy my own TV back? This is currently what is happening. Why must we be buying back what rightfully belongs to our people? So this thing of saying that willing buyer, willing seller, that thing shouldn't even be the question of the day. It should be about expropriation without compensation. And then because we are humane enough, we can then say, okay, chief, there we can see you have built yourself your house. That portion we are going to leave for you and your kids, but the rest we are going to take in order for us to distribute to those who don't have. You see, land is the only commodity that cannot be reproduced. We can produce 100 million smart TVs. We can produce 100 million phones. We can never produce 100 million hectares of land. We only have to make do with what is already given. You see, when we sing our anthem, we say Namibia, our motherland. Now, how can Namibia sing Namibia motherland if they don't have land? How do you proudly sing your national anthem?
Yes.
What needs to happen is that we relook our policies in terms of land, and we need to seriously say that, colleagues, you voluntarily say this is the land that you're going to give up, or is government expropriated without compensation?
Talking of, taking the land back without compensation, expropriation, without compensation, as you said, some people have, those people who are against that, policy have said, but this will cause chaos and probably plunge you back to those days of, genocides, whereby people will be scrambling for, everything and causing a lot of conflict, within country. What do you say to that?
It's not necessarily the case. You see, in this country, our country is divided. We have what is called communal land. Communal land simply means it's land that belongs to the state. You can never own it. It can never be yours. You literally just use it for a period. Once you're done using it, it's given to the next person. So what we're simply saying is that the whole of this country must become communal land, land that is literally controlled by the government. And then what we then say is to say, okay, my brother, you are interested in farming. Here is a portion for you to do farming. You are interested in mining. Here is a portion for you to do mining. You are just interested in having a piece of land to call your home. Here is your piece of land to call home. So what needs to be done is government needs to take ownership of the land, and then government then regulates to say who gets to use the land. Because some of these people, they've got thousands of hectares of land, but there's no productivity happening on that land. I mean, we import 90% of our food still from outside of our country, while we still have land. Does that make any sense? This simply means that some of these people, because of the ownership of the land, these are just their holiday homes. When Germany becomes too cold, then they basically come from Germany to Namibia because, we have got sun, and then they come and relax there on their farms. And then once they are bored, then they go back to Germany when it's now maybe a bit hot that side. So that is part of the problem. What we're saying is that all should be in the hands of the state, and the state should then equally redistribute it to those who need it. We've got farmers who seriously need land, but they don't know where to keep their cattle. As a result, they have to graze their cattle next to the side of the road and things of this sort. But you just have one guy, the guy has not even been on the farm for the last 10 years. He's just there in Germany or Italy, but it is land, it's private property. You can't go there, you can't do anything. No, that doesn't make any sense. What we're saying is that those who are using the land currently now productive, they can continue keeping it. But those who just have the land for status, unfortunately, land is not for status, land is for production.
Comrade Amushelelo, let us appreciate your relationship with the economic freedom fighters in South Africa.
Yeah, no, you see, so this is what needs to be understood. They are now a group of young Africans speaking the same ideology. You see, just back in the days when we had the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, and many others who were speaking of one continent and all of that, we also now have a group of young people who understand that if we are one day to liberate Africa from its yokes of poverty and to liberate it completely, we have to be speaking with one voice. We literally have to be united. So obviously, the ideology of economic freedom, it's an ideology that every African can relate to. I mean, the name is pragmatic. The name is very simple. Economic freedom fighters. Our parents have attained political freedom. But political freedom without economic freedom means absolutely nothing. And that is why you're seeing many of our African brothers and sisters are continuously fleeing the continent in order to go look for what? For economic opportunities. Now, why is it that these people are fleeing Africa? It's because, unfortunately, we only have political freedom, but we do not have economic freedom. So we, as a generation of young people, it is now our turn to fight for economic freedom, but not in the next lifetime, in our lifetime. That simply means that in our lifetime, we must become economically free to a point whereby you are able to live in a decent house, you are able to send your kids to a decent school, you are able to afford decent health care, you are literally able to live a decent life. That is what we're literally fighting for. And that is why the message of economic freedom resonates literally with anyone and everyone.
Yeah. So you'll say everything that you are doing right now, at the programs of action of the EFF. What you are doing right now in Namibia.
Not.
Yeah.
You see, the ideology might be the same, but the methodology differs. Now, what we're fighting for is basically economic freedom for our people. Now, if you look at the modus of operandi that we're currently using in Namibia, we are literally hands-on. We are not speaking from parliament. We are not speaking from conferences. We do the work literally on the ground, because unfortunately some things require you to go onto the ground and do confrontations with companies and things of that sort. So it's not to say that we have necessarily using their same programs or anything of the sort. It's just to say that the ideology is the same, which is economic freedom, but the modus of operandi is obviously we've chosen a different one, and obviously the landscapes are not the same. You see, in South Africa, it's completely different because you've got 60 million plus people. In Namibia, you've got less than 3 million people. So the dynamics are not the same. The culture and all of these things, they also play a huge different role. So it's not the same as in South Africa or Swaziland or Eswatini or anywhere else. So what must be understood is to say that what we are fighting for is for gradually EFF across Africa to start taking over governments, and then we can start speaking with one voice in order for us to integrate and ensure that we obviously have one parliament, we have one army, we have one currency, we literally have everything one. We become borderless, whereby if I need to travel to Angola, I don't need a passport. If I need to go to Zambia, no passport needed. I can literally fly now from here to Accra, and when I arrive there, I will not be asked any visas and things of that sort, because we have now integrated Africa into becoming one.
Yes. What would you say to people who say, look, we hear this message by, the economic freedom fighters in South Africa, we hear this message by Comrade Amushelelo, but the problem is the approach. I understand that you say you are hands-on, you are confronting some of, this capitalist in order to try to, attain that goal, which you say is economic freedom. But what will you say to people who say they agree with the principle, but they have the problem with the approach? There is too, radicalism around doing this. You are causing public unrest. you are causing chaos in Namibia. What do we say to people who say, look, we agree with the principle, but we differ with the approach?
You see, unfortunately, these people should still be very thankful that our approach is not military, whereby we are forcefully overthrowing governments or anything of the sort. What we're doing is still within the democratic principles of any society. What we're doing is basically what you would call civil disobedience, whereby we would stage protests and things of this sort. These are things that have been done before. I mean, go look at how Mahatma Gandhi, with the salt protest, was able to achieve independence for India. Go and see how the likes of Martin Luther, through protest and civil disobedience, were able to achieve civil rights in America. So what we're doing is simply non-violence. Unfortunately, we do not subscribe to any form of violence because we think that we do now live in a stage and time whereby everything can be dialogued. So it's just a bit of confrontation. Unfortunately, they should perhaps speak to the capitalists to stop being so capitalistic, and then perhaps we wouldn't be having to face them radically. Because
Yes.
the problem is, the problem is you need to force this person to come to a table just to negotiate, because they simply are arrogant due to the money that they have. And you know, money buys you influence, money buys you power. Now, we obviously need to make sure and tell them to say, Chief, doesn't matter the amount of money that you have, but when the people unite to fight against you, the people will always win. And
Yes.
unfortunately, you can never beat the will of the people. And this is what we're trying to tell to capitalists and to whoever needs to understand our program of action. That is to say that we are simply doing this to make sure that we live in a just society, we live in an equal society. It's not correct that you have a few individuals who literally go to bed throwing away food, and then there are individuals who've got nothing to eat. What we're simply saying is that there must come a point in time whereby everyone at least has something to eat before they go to bed.
I understand, you know, in the course of work that you do, you have been arrested so many times. You have been to court. You have spent, you know, so many days in prison. How has this affected the work that you are doing for, you know, those people in Namibia who are economically, you know, disfranchised?
I mean, the problem is with prison is that obviously it's the time that you lose that you're unable to basically fight for others. I think what prison does for me is that it's also a time of reflection, whereby I'm able to now obviously study more, I'm able to learn more, and obviously I'm able to also just basically be able to re-energize and rethink and re-strategize. Because part of the problem is I hardly get any rest because I have to be up and down the whole time. So prison for me also becomes a form of a pause. It becomes a form of a rest. And it also becomes a form of a time for me to basically be able to see how can we fight better and smarter people. Now, obviously, you need to understand, they arrest because they do not want you to fight for those who can't fight for themselves.
So they're basically taming you in a way.
They're basically taming you and hoping that you basically give up fighting for others, because this is a form of punishment to others as well, to say that if you try and stand up for others, this is what is going to happen to you. So this is how governments want to keep our people in fear, to say that if you dare and try to become like Amushelelo, this is what is going to happen to you. But this does not deter any fighter who is genuinely in love with his people, who is genuinely in love with making sure that his country is a better place, to stop him from fighting for others.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in war, there are always going to be casualties, and some of us, unfortunately, have been casualties of fighting for this economic freedom, and will continue being casualties until our people have attained economic freedom in this lifetime.
Yes. I read one of your posts. I think you wrote it while you were in custody, if I'm not mistaken. You know, you were decrying that some of the people that you know you are fighting for are not showing you the necessary support or the full support that you need. And I was wondering, have you ever, woke up, one morning and say, look, maybe I should give up fighting for these people?
You see, the problem is once you have a purpose and once you have a calling, it doesn't matter the amount of people who are supporting you. You have to fulfill your calling, you have to fulfill your purpose. Now, the problem is with Namibians is that Namibians are not as brave as many other people of other countries. Our people, they've got small hearts. We are very peaceful people. That's why you'll see in this country, violence is it's non-existent. You won't find us burning down buildings or anything of that sort because we are two peaceful people. We are the type of people that will tolerate disrespect. We are the type of people that will tolerate being exploited. We are the type of people that will tolerate poverty. We are the type of people that will tolerate hunger. We are the type of people that tolerate corrupt leadership. We are the people that literally will tolerate anything and everything. And that is why our people are suffering the way they're suffering because we tolerate so much. So obviously what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be the spark for the next generation of young people that is going to say that. But no, there was once upon a time a brave fighter called Saddam Amushelelo to be like him. And these young people are perhaps, if we fail to bring economic freedom in our lifetime, they are the ones who are going to take out, and they are the ones who are going to keep fighting.
Yeah.
And sadly, like I said, people do not appreciate you for what is it that you do. But I'm sure the day that I'm going to die, there's going to be a lot of people trying to give me flowers. But I tell people, don't give me flowers when I'm dead. Give them to me now when I can smell them. Because as a dead man, I'm not interested in flowers, but give me my flowers now so that I can also be able to smell them.
Yeah, let us appreciate some of the stakeholders within the civic society. Would you say there are some of some of your stakeholders within the civic society who are supporting you or supporting the work that you do?
I mean, the problem is with our civil society in this country is that they do not support too much radicalism. They always want liberals, people they can control. You must be able to speak, but don't speak too harshly. Speak softly, and they want to be able to control you in terms of what is it that you do, and that is why we're very cautious of accepting any type of support and funding from civil society organization because they also have particular agendas that they want to fulfill. And unfortunately, we're not going to allow them to fulfill them through radical institutions such as ours. And unfortunately, in this country, there's not much collaboration in terms of civic societies because everyone basically has their own agenda. And everyone basically, at the end of the day, wants to be the captain. They want to be the hero. They want the whole shine to be on them. I've said it on several times. I don't care whether you're white, you're black. For as long as you're fighting injustice, I'm more than willing to fight injustice with you. But unfortunately, people, due to the fact that you have now perceived to be a rebel or you have been labeled, people shy away from associating with you. And that is why people will not openly support me because they are afraid that, hey, Chief, if I openly support you, I might lose that tender, I might lose this contract, or I might be blacklisted. And the problem is in Africa, you become once you're anti-government, your family is monitored, your friends are monitored, your associates, everything that you do becomes it. And the whole idea is they're going to try and frustrate you. They are going to cripple you economically until you start bowing down to them and until you start begging them for forgiveness to say, we are sorry, and all of these things. But unfortunately, like I said, this line of work is not for people who are not brave. It's not for people who are not courageous. And it's unfortunately not for people who are selfish. You must be selfless. You must be able to offer yourself as a sacrifice for the betterment of others.
Yes. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Namibia's most celebrated civil rights activist. I'm talking about none other than Comrade Michael Amushelelo. We're talking to him live from Windhoek, Namibia. We're just about to wrap up our show this evening. And I'm going to read some of your comments, and I'll start with Bright Mafanetsa. He's saying, from the Namibian side, what advantages do they see in using the ID cards to cross into Botswana? What more can be done to stimulate more from both sides? Comrade Amushelelo, there is a comment there. Recently, we have seen an initiative whereby now we can cross to Namibia using ID cards instead of passports. We can do the same. Note that comment. Let me read another one. Is from Khalelo Opadile. She's saying we need someone like him in Botswana. Someone who is willing to fight for the people's rights. Namibians are so blessed to have someone like him. May God bless him. Khalalelo Opadile is giving you the flowers. You've been saying they should give you the flowers while you are still alive. She's giving you the flowers, and she's saying, and she's saying maybe we need somebody like you here in Botswana. Yeah.
Just a side note. You know what? The funny thing is that a king is never celebrated in his country. He's always celebrated in a foreign land. So unfortunately, I've realized that I'm more loved outside of Namibia than in Namibia. I mean, if you look at my comments on social, people from Botswana always saying, hey, Chief, when are you coming to Botswana? If you look at my Zambian counterparts, hey, brother, we need you here. If you look at my brothers in South Africa, hey, Mfwetu, hey, these people don't appreciate you. Hey, come here, we need you here. So unfortunately, it's just the harsh reality that people never appreciate whatever it is that they have. And sadly, what you don't appreciate, it will always be taken.
Mm-hmm. The question of the ID, crossing into Botswana, and us crossing into Namibia. What do you say about that initiative?
It's long overdue, and that's why we're saying that we should work towards a borderless continent. You know, the issue that Botswana and Namibia has having their issues. I mean, sometimes the Botswana Defense Force kills some of our members and things of this sort. Now, these are issues that we need to be able to resolve and say, colleagues, we are neighbors, and you know, the funny thing is that the two of us, we can never run away from each other, né? No matter how much we want, we will always share a common border. Yeah. Now, it is time for us to realize that we should start doing away small by small with this necessity of visas, passports, and things of this sort. Botswanans should be able to cross freely into Namibia, and we should also be able to do the same. Now, remember, you are a landlocked country. The last thing you'd want to do is obviously have a neighbor that you are not on good speaking terms with. Remember, most of your goods that you need to import and export, they will have to go through countries that have obviously seas and ports. Now, the last thing you'd want is a situation whereby we do not have a mutual relationship, we are unable to communicate, our people are not on speaking terms and things of that sort. So I think this is an opportunity for young entrepreneurs. It's an opportunity for business-minded people to say, how do we then ensure that we start making sure that there's some sort of economic activity that's derived from the fact that we can now travel to Botswana without IDs and things of that sort.
Yes. Comrade Amushelelo, I hear the idea, United States of Africa. Julius Malema has said it. But I wanted to pick your mind here. The Patriotic Alliance and Gayton Mackenzie are saying, look, Abraham.
But wait. You see, what's and this is the thing, the problem is in Africa, once you are unable to solve particular problems, you now want to deal with people. The reason why people are coming to your country is because there's a particular issue that we don't want to deal with. Now, let's say, for example, ZANU-PF is a corrupt government. These guys, they are looting. Instead of buying x-ray machines for the hospitals, they will rather buy cars for their chiefs. You'll see them spending, in Botswana, not in Botswana, but in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is perhaps the only African country that you'll find after South Africa, the most Rolls Royce. Now, how do you want to tell me that that is a poor country when you have individuals driving cars that are worth 15 million pula and things of this sort? So that's mismanagement, that's corruption. Now, what is the problem with African leaders? African leaders have created a club of African thieves, whereby they've got the SADC, they've got the AU, and when elections are rigged, what do? They don't condemn it. They rather say, congratulations, Mwanagwaga, congratulations, Crocodile, you have won the elections free and fair, despite the fact that we have seen that the elections were not free and fair. So, and that is why individuals like Gayton McKenzie, they should stay away from power, because they do not understand that in order for Africa to one day be able to realize its full potential, we should be able to work as one, and we should never be able to isolate ourselves. I mean, if you look at Botswana as a classic example, you have a population of roughly less than 3 million people. Now, once you start building your industries, once fully industrialized, do you think those 3 million be able to buy all your products? Absolutely not. You will have to obviously export, you will have to trade with others. And once we start integrating Africa, making sure that we become one, that's the only way we'll be able to solve some of these critical issues. Now, if immigrants are coming into Namibia, Botswana, whatever the case, we must be able to say, but why are people running away from their country? And then we should be able, as leaders, to say, Chief, solve your issues. Why are your hospitals not having medication? Why must people cross the border just for them to come and be attended by a clinic? Do you not have clinics in your country? So we must be able to hold other leaders accountable, because in Africa, a leader can be doing something terrible, and it will be other African leaders that will be praising him to say that he's doing something good and all of these things. So unfortunately, we do not need people who come and sugarcoat. We need people who speak the truth and who stand up for truth and who fight for all Africans and not just some Africans.
Yes. I hear you about, a country speaking out when their neighbors are not doing something that is good. And I'm sitting here thinking, possibly you will agree with our former, president, Ian Khama, of some of, his stance of what has been happening in the region, especially in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we need more courageous leaders such as him. And unfortunately, in Africa, and especially African leaders, they have this mentality of always praising each other, despite the fact knowing that this person is doing something wrong. I mean, I don't want to mention specific countries, but we have countries where you can clearly see the country is being mismanaged, is being misgoverned. But the very same African leaders will be the ones flying to those countries. They will apparently go have bilateral talks. And I just wonder, like, what is it that you want to learn from this leader? Do you want to learn how to beat up your people? Do you want to learn how to arbitrarily arrest your people? Or what is it that you want to go and learn from this particular leader? And that is why we're saying that some of these things continue happening, because African leaders do not hold other African leaders accountable.
Yes, Comrade Amushelelo. Yeah. Comrade Amushelelo? Comrade Amushelelo? Comrade Amushelelo? Can you hear me? Yes, I was going to say...
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was going to say time is up. Your last words, and as we wrap up, can you kindly take us through some of the activities that you have lined up so far as the work that you are doing is concerned?
Man, I think to round off is to say that as African youth, it's time that we obviously started uniting. It's time that we start speaking with one voice. It's time that we obviously start taking politics seriously. The problem is with the African youth, we are much more concerned with we're much more concerned with slaying, we're much more concerned with being nice and all of these things, but we're not paying attention to what is actually happening to our countries and all of these things. So African youth must start taking politics
Comrade
seriously,
Amushelelo?
because politics determine how your life is going to be.
Yes. Comrade
And
Amushelelo?
in my parting words is to say that if we do not unite, okay, I think the network is a bit tripping, but
Yeah.
if you can hear me, in my last words is basically to say thank you guys so much for your time, for your effort. I surely look forward to having more interviews, and then we can obviously dive into more. I think an hour is not sufficient enough for us to speak, because
Yeah.
when it comes to speaking, some of us are naturally blessed.
Comrade Amushelelo, let me take this opportunity to thank you for coming through tonight and say, look, continue doing the work that you are doing, inspiring young people and making sure that we attain that economic freedom as the African people. And I want to assure you that I will invite you here in Gaborone, Botswana very soon. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
That was Comrade Michael Amushelelo, Namibia's most celebrated civil rights activist. Batenegi Parliament Talk Show, broadcasting live right here from the Access TV studio in Gaborone, Botswana. Batenegi Parliament on Facebook, YouTube, Batenegi Parliament. Good evening.